Hiya, happy Campano! And yes, I am using the same balloon I just used for the last video that I filmed 5 minutes ago. It's fine. So it's the 2nd of April. I am starting camp a day late because I was busy yesterday. I am so excited. I finished writing Project Side Book 1 by the end of February, and then I have taken the entirety of March off writing, and I feel really excited to jump into it. I was feeling a bit burnt out by the end of February, but I seem to be very excited again, very looking forward to jumping back into this book. I have 3 goals for camp, and I do realize that I made a video about my goals for camp, but some of them have changed, so I'm gonna tell you what they are anyway. The first one is to outline the rest of my series, because Project Side is actually book 1, and I don't know what happens later. And I kinda need to know what happens later at some point. Now, this goal was not part of my original plan. I was actually planning on doing this after revisions of book 1 start outlining the rest of the series. But after having a long conversation with the lovely Wallace from the channel Wallissimo, I was made aware that this was not the soundest plan, and that maybe doing the outline first would be a more logical progression of events. So for the first week of camp, I am going to be working on outlining the rest of the series, which I am sort of dreading a little bit, but it's fine. And then afterwards, we're working on the original goals, which were rereading the first book in the series and making a revision plan for what I want to change for the upcoming months. Now, part of the reason I'm dreading outlining the rest of the series is because I've never outlined something before without having written it first. I am very much a discovery writer by heart, and I have recently gotten into outlining with Project Side when I did my second rewrite from scratch. But before that, I was pantsing it. My usual approach for coming up with ideas is to just go about my daily life and wait for them to happen. So the idea of sitting down and brainstorming something, I just don't know how to do that. How do you force ideas to happen? However, I have been going for the method of waiting for ideas to happen for about a year now, and they haven't been, so maybe giving them a nudge might not be a bad idea. I'm just gonna have to figure out how to do that. I'm really pleasantly surprised with how well that went. I was expecting it to be really difficult and sort of pulling teeth, pulling ideas out of myself. I think that went really well. I don't have a vague outline as such yet. I've just been brainstorming a bit. I should probably clarify that when I say a vague outline, what I mean, what I'm defining to be my goal, is to have the start point and end point of each of the books in the series. So at the minute, I've mostly been brainstorming the ending, which I had a very vague idea of, but not really. So I've got a couple of details that I think are gonna work very well, and then there's also some questions on some of the other plot lines that I had in mind. I haven't figured out how to tie that in yet, but I know that it's things that I need to figure out, so at least I have some idea of what I need to continue brainstorming. And in terms of the previous books, I know what book 1 is because I've already written it. For book 2, I have a very clear idea on the start and even the first half of it, but I don't know where it ends. And then I know where book 3 ends, and book 4 is sort of more or less there. So I just gotta figure out the ending of book 2 and the start of book 3. I could just make it a trilogy instead of 4 books, but I think that would be too rushed. But at the same time, I can't think of what to put in between. Tomorrow, I'm actually going to London to see my friend and fellow author Tuva Steek, which I'm really excited about. But what this means in terms of writing is that I have 2 hours worth of train rides. So I'm hoping that I'm gonna just listen to music and let myself daydream rather than doing an active sort of trying to problem solve brainstorming. Just relax, listen to music, and see if something comes to me as I just daydream of these ideas that I've already written down. So that's the plan. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. Good morning, it is Saturday the 9th of April, and I am officially ready to start my reread. I wouldn't necessarily say that the outlining process is finished, I don't think it's ever going to be finished until I actually finish writing all 4 books. But I think I've got enough of an idea of where I'm going that I'm comfortable with moving on to the next step. Most of the process was just throwing ideas onto a blank paper and just stringing things together and doing like this really messy brainstorming sort of process. But towards the end I did put down a little table with all of the information and put it all together and try to more or less do it in a way that I can see what's happening across the different books. And this is what that table is looking like at the minute. Obviously I'm not showing you the actual writing on it, but you can see how much I figured out and how much I still have to figure out. The main missing point is still that bit between books 2 and 3. I have an idea for the ending of book 2, I'm just not sure whether I like it and whether it makes sense, so I want to brainstorm that out a bit more. But realistically, this is probably as far as I'm gonna get to for now. I'll probably keep like adding things to this document as I go if I think of anything, but for now, I'm moving on to the next goal, which is the reread. I am really happy that I took the time to do this though. I have been feeling very overwhelmed by the fact that I don't know what happens in the next few books. And I'm glad that Wallace pushed me to do this because it really helped and I feel a lot better about the series as a whole now. This weekend's actually the final weekend in this vlog in which I'm gonna be in this house, because next weekend we are going to go visit my boyfriend's parents and stay a couple of days over there. I've got a bit of a break for Easter, but that means that this is the last weekend that I actually have access to my computer, and then next weekend I'm just gonna have my laptop on me. So what I'm thinking is I can easily do the reread from my laptop, but I can't do any digital art or editing from my laptop. So I'm thinking this weekend I actually want to prioritize doing some digital art instead. I've got this wonderful new tablet that my lovely friend Geek sent me, and I haven't had that much time to use it yet. I've done a little bit, like it took quite a bit of time to get it set up because I had to get a new program to use it, and it just took a while. And then when I did have it set up, I was behind on my deadline for making the badges for the Make Chaos Rain event, which, if you've missed that video, will be somewhere up there. I feel like those badges were actually a really good introduction into getting used to the new program and the controls and like looking down when I'm drawing and not having my arm one place and my eyes further up, which is what I used to do because my tablet didn't have a screen on it. But now that I'm a little bit used to it, I'm really looking forward to doing something a little bit bigger, a little bit more complicated. And one of my 2022 goals is actually to draw more environments and backgrounds and that sort of thing. So I am going to jump into Unsplash and find a nice photo to copy and see if I can practice on that a little bit. And I'm really looking forward to doing that. Hiya, it is the 14th today and it is Wednesday and I am going on holidays tomorrow. I'm probably not gonna update you very much while I'm traveling, so I wanted to make sure to at least let you know how I'm doing before I go. I'm a little bit behind. I was supposed to be done with Act 1 before my holiday and then do Act 2 and 3 while I'm there. I'm only like 2 or 3 chapters behind, so it's not that bad, but like a tiny little bit behind. Reading this back has been interesting. Parts of it are better than I remember. Some chapters I don't remember coming up with those things, and they work really well, and I'm really, really proud of them. A lot of chapters are really bad and worse than I remember. I don't think I've come across anything that needs like an entire rewrite yet. However, especially the first few chapters are gonna need some heavy line editing, because goodness me, 2020 Marta was a drama queen, and the purple prose is just everywhere. Like, oh my god, the amount of drama and like over emphasizing in this everyday life activities that the character's doing is honestly hilarious, and we're gonna have to tone that down. But the actual plot, I think, is fairly solid. I don't know. Little bit torn. But yeah, I'm hoping to finish my reread while I'm on holidays, so I might be able to talk to you a little bit here and there, but I'm gonna be with family, so we'll see what happens. Hello, I'm not sure how well you're gonna be able to hear me just because the birds are being very loud right now, but at the same time they're lovely, so you get to listen to them with me. I am very nearly done rereading draft 3 of Project Side. I think I have about 8 chapters left to go. I did want to technically finish that today, but I don't think that's gonna happen anymore, but like, we're very close, so it's probably fine. I have been finding myself losing interest a bit with Act 3. I think part of that is the fact that I rushed it a bit so it's not as good, and also I literally just wrote it like a month ago, so I really know what happens super well. Some of the chapters I rewrote multiple times, so I'm super familiar with them, and I've just been dragging my heels a little bit over reading them again. They're not quite as interesting as the really early Act 1 chapters that I'd completely forgotten about, but it's fine, just 8 chapters to go. Hiya, it is the 23rd of April, and I have officially won Camp Manor. I say won in the very loose sense of the word because it's not like I'm actually using the website. I just had a couple of goals for the month and I have completed them, so I guess that means I won? That's how this works, right? Before I wrap up this video, I wanted to very quickly talk to you about my process for going through this reread and organizing the revisions ahead of time a little bit. I've never done any revisions before where I wasn't just rewriting the whole thing from scratch, so this is very new to me and I want to sort of show you how I'm going about it, and then hopefully when I finish revisions and figure out what worked and what didn't, you will find that out as well. And that way, when I eventually spend 3 years writing another draft and then forget how to do revisions again, I can come back and remind myself of what worked and what didn't, and hopefully get better over time. While I was doing my reread, I was doing 3 things at the same time. The first one was just keeping a document of notes open and writing down anything that stood out to me, anything that I wanted to change, anything that felt a little bit weird, as well as anything that I felt like was working really well, to remind myself to not touch it. The second thing I was doing was organizing all of my files. While writing draft 3, I was editing as I went quite a lot, which meant that I had a lot of different versions for different chapters in which I went back and fixed things or rewrote the same chapter from a different character's perspective just to see how it would work. And I ended up with quite a lot of documents in a very messy file system. So while I was reading this, I was finding the correct version, and then in order to save myself some trouble next time, I was moving it into a new file system for the new draft. And then the third thing I was doing while doing my reread was going through and taking notes on anything that I felt like I would need to know for revisions. So for example, character names of side characters that I'd forgotten about, or any like miscellaneous background information for world building or things that I might need to know when I start working through this draft again, because a lot of the fixes that I want to do for draft 4 are fixing inconsistencies, because I was not keeping track of things while I was writing this draft, and there are a lot of inconsistencies. And the main thing that I decided to keep track on was my outline. I did have an outline when I started drafting, however this changed as I went a lot, and I wasn't very good at changing the outline as the draft changed, and also the chapter names were all over the place, and basically finding anything was kinda impossible. So what I've done is I've got this little outline. I'm obviously not going to show you the actual descriptions of what happened in each chapter, but that middle column that's blocked out is the actual what happens bit. And I've got my chapter numbers, I've got what part it's in, as well as what character the chapter relates to. And this is just going to make it a lot easier for me to find chapters as I'm looking for certain things when I'm revising, because I'm planning on going from most important to least important rather than doing it sequentially. So just being able to find things is gonna save me a lot of time, obviously, and I really should have done this from the start. The other thing you might notice is that I actually included a little column for word count. When I finished drafting draft 3, I had no idea how many words my draft was gonna be. Going back through and finding each of the correct versions and adding up the word count was far too much effort, so I just sort of approximated it to like 2k words per chapter times 60, 120k. It's not 120k, I've actually written 103,665 words, which is added up down here. And that makes sense because I'm actually missing 3 chapters that I have space for, but they're empty. And some chapters are a bit shorter at the end. So these are the things I was doing while I was reading my draft. But what about after reading my draft? Because now I found that I not only had the document of notes that I had while rereading the draft, I also had another document that I've been keeping while drafting of changes or ideas that I think of for earlier chapters that are a little bit too early for me to go back and revise, which means that I was left with 2 documents worth of ideas and changes and things, completely out of order, mostly just in whatever order I think of things. And now I had to take all of those notes and figure out how I'm actually revising this book and what I want to implement and what I don't want to implement. So to go around this, I made myself a little revisions database, also using Notion, in case you hadn't noticed by now that I'm using Notion. And the first item on this isn't actually spoilery, so I can't show you this row. So I've got the first column is the actual task or change that I want to do. This can be very small things, or it's also bigger plot issues or world building things. Then I have a column for status, so this starts with detected, as in I have found a change that needs to be made, to brainstorming, which is when I actually sit down and figure out what the problem is, fixing, which is basically in progress, and then a review by myself, a review by someone else if I feel like I want someone to check the specific thing, and then fix this just when it's done and they'll disappear off this list. And then I also have cancelled, which is if I decide they're no longer relevant or I no longer like that idea, I can cancel it and then it'll also disappear off the list. My next category is scope, which is really just what part of the story is going to be affected by this change. Multiple parts is obviously the biggest issues, so I'll be tackling those first, and then anything that's like a single part or a chapter, I can go back to it. It's not necessarily just what the change will affect, but also if there's any consequences for later parts of the story, I normally write that down as well. So anything that's those sort of big snowball changes are marked as multiple parts, and those are the ones I will be tackling first. Then I have category, which is just what type of change it is, the world building, character, plot. And then I also have chapter structure, which is changes where I'm not sure that the pacing of the chapters works well. There's only like 2 that are in this category, but there's one place where I'm not sure that 2 chapters should be reordered differently. Character is fairly self-explanatory, just which POV character it affects, and then I also have some characters in grey that are not POV characters, but if the change is very specific to them, then I'll just write it down as it being about them, because side characters deserve to have their own category as well. Affected part and affected chapters is also fairly self-explanatory, and then issue detected is where I realized that this issue happened. So if it comes from the document that I was keeping notes on while rereading the book, or during drafting, which is from the other document that I already had. And then obviously things that stood out to me twice, so that have both documents on there, are gonna be more important in a way, because I know that they're definitely a problem, whereas things that I only noticed one time are gonna be less important, and I'm gonna think about whether or not they're needed. This particular category isn't gonna be super important for this next draft, but the idea with this is that I want to keep using the same system after I give this to beta readers. So once I have multiple opinions of this, I can put down who the beta reader was that proposed this change, and if multiple people say something, then I also get to see that, as well as if I have a question on how to implement something, or like I want to double check something with someone, I know exactly who to go to. And then the final category is to be fixed in, which is basically, do I want to fix it right now for draft 4? Is it something that I know I want to fix, but it'll be fixed later? Or is it something that I'm still not very sure about, so I'm gonna leave it until I get more feedback on this, for example? And no longer relevant is just the same as going into status and changing into cancelling. I don't really know why I have it twice, but there it is. So if I make the status column a little bit bigger so that I can properly hide that first column with the actual change name, I can show you all of my thingies. So as you can see, there's quite a lot of changes. I decided while doing this that any like scene level changes that I had on the reread document, I wasn't gonna put on here because it was gonna be far too many things if I did that. So instead what I've done is I highlighted those things in that document, and anything that was a bigger change I've put into this document or database or whatever. So yeah, I'm supposedly meant to be finishing this sometime in July. Seeing as all of these are major changes, I am not entirely sure how possible that's gonna be. Also, if I scroll all the way over here but keep that hidden, you can see this little count at the bottom of how many rows I actually have, and it's 68. 68 major changes that I need to make. Admittedly, not all of them are marked as draft 4, but the majority are. Yeah, the very vast majority is draft 4. So this is gonna take me a while. But then the idea with having this database is I can, of course, add a new view. Let's just call this filtered for now. And then I can sort this by scope. And then I want this to be descending. And now I get all of my bigger changes first. But of course, I only want the things that I actually want to fix at the minute. So if I add a filter, and we want only things to be fixed in draft 4, and that actually leaves me with a total of 58 items, which is still bad, but it's better. And of course I can also sort this by character, so if I want to work on all the chapters on a specific character first, or even just all of the character specific changes of any specific character, I can do that. I can work through my world building changes all in one go, that sort of thing. So I'm hoping this is going to be useful. It might be completely over-engineered, and I might have been better off just doing everything linearly. We'll find out, I guess. So seeing how this was the final goal that I had for the month of April, I am going to stop working on this now and wrap up the video, and then we're gonna take a 1-week break, and in May we will start revisions again, and I will of course be vlogging it. Feel free to let me know how April went for you and whether or not you participated in camp. And if you have any tips on revisions, I would love to hear them, because let's be honest, I might be overthinking this a little bit. It's fine. Have a wonderful, wonderful week, and I will see you very soon. Bye bye.